On Saturday morning, January 24th, 2026, the world woke up to a social media post that effectively declared economic war on America's closest neighbor. Donald Trump, back in the White House for just over a year, didn't mince words. The threat? A 100% tariff on every single Canadian product crossing the border. The reason? A new trade deal between Ottawa and Beijing. To understand how we got here, how the world's largest peaceful trading relationship reached the brink of total collapse, we have to look at the man Trump calls Governor Carney. Prime Minister Mark Carney, the former central banker who took the helm in Ottawa just 10 months ago, is now locked in a high-stakes game of chicken with a president who views trade not as a partnership, but as a weapon. This isn't just about lumber or steel anymore. This is about electric vehicles, the future of the Arctic, and a fundamental disagreement over who runs the world. Today, we're breaking down the timeline of the 2026 trade war, the secret details of the Canada-China deal, and why the special relationship might actually be over for good.
The Davos Defiance. To find the spark for this fire, we have to travel back 4 days to the snowy peaks of Switzerland, the World Economic Forum in Davos, 2026. This annual gathering of global elites has seen its share of dramatic moments, but few speeches have carried the weight of what Mark Carney delivered on January 20th. On that cold Monday morning, Carney delivered a speech that many are calling the most defiant address by a Canadian leader in history. Without naming Trump directly, Carney declared that the rules-based, U.S.-led international order was effectively dead. The post-World War II architecture that had governed global trade, security, and diplomacy for 8 decades was, in his view, crumbling before our eyes. He told a room full of global elites, CEOs, finance ministers, and heads of state that middle powers like Canada, the UK, Australia, and France could no longer rely on comfortable assumptions about geography or old alliances. The idea that sharing a language, a border, or a history with the United States guaranteed protection or partnership was, according to Carney, a dangerous illusion. His message was clear. America is no longer a reliable partner. In one of the speech's most memorable lines, he urged middle powers to find a third path between the United States and China, warning that those who failed to adapt wouldn't just lose influence, they would end up, in his words, on the menu. The speech sent shockwaves through the conference halls. European leaders quietly nodded in agreement. Asian diplomats took careful notes. And back in Washington, Donald Trump was watching. Trump's response was immediate and personal. Addressing the forum via video link the next day, he shot back with characteristic bluntness. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. It was a warning wrapped in a threat, delivered with the kind of personal edge that has defined Trump's second term. But Trump didn't stop there. The personal animosity hit a fever pitch when Trump revoked Carney's invitation to his newly formed Board of Peace, a small group of world leaders intended to oversee the humanitarian situation in Gaza and coordinate Middle East policy. The snub was deliberate and public. In Trump's eyes, Carney had committed the ultimate sin. He had publicly signaled that Canada was looking for new friends. And in Trump's transactional worldview, disloyalty comes with consequences.
The China card. So what was the third path Carney was talking about? It wasn't theoretical. It was a deal signed in Beijing just weeks ago, and it represents the most significant shift in Canadian trade policy in a generation. For years, Canada had moved in lockstep with the U.S. on China policy, particularly when it came to electric vehicles. Both countries imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, citing national security concerns, unfair subsidies, and the need to protect domestic manufacturing. It was a rare area of total alignment between Washington and Ottawa. But Carney's new government pivoted hard. Under the new agreement, finalized in early January, Canada will allow 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the country annually at a mere 6.1% tariff. effectively opening the Canadian market to brands like BYD, NIO, and Geely. That's a massive policy reversal, and it came with significant concessions from Beijing. In exchange, China is dropping its retaliatory taxes on Canadian canola, lobster, and crab, industries that have been bleeding since the trade war began in early 2025. Canadian farmers and fishermen who had been collateral damage in the broader U.S.-China confrontation would finally get relief. For Carney, this was a win-win: cheaper cars for Canadian consumers and market access for Canadian exporters. To Carney, this was pragmatism. To Trump, it was a betrayal of the highest order. On Saturday, Trump accused Carney of trying to turn Canada into a drop-off port for China, a way for Beijing to bypass U.S. trade barriers and flood the American market with cheap products. The logic, according to Trump, was simple. Chinese cars enter Canada at low tariffs, get assembled or rebranded with minor modifications, and then cross into the United States as Canadian products under CUSMA rules. Trump's Truth Social post was apocalyptic in tone. China will eat Canada alive, he wrote, completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses, social fiber, and general way of life. He painted a picture of Canada as a naive, overmatched country being manipulated by a predatory superpower, hard truth. But economists on both sides of the border have pushed back on Trump's drop-off port theory. The rules of origin provisions in CUSMA are strict. Vehicles must have at least 75% North American content to qualify for tariff-free treatment. A Chinese EV imported into Canada and then re-exported to the U.S. wouldn't qualify. Carney's government has pointed this out repeatedly, but Trump seems uninterested in the technical details.
The Arctic factor. But there's a hidden layer to this trade war that involves a territory most people don't associate with trade disputes: Greenland. Throughout 2025, Trump has renewed his push to acquire Greenland from Denmark, or at least establish total military dominance over it. His latest project, unveiled in a press conference last November, is the Golden Dome, a massive U.S.-led missile defense shield that would cover the entire North American Arctic, including Alaska, northern Canada, and Greenland. The Golden Dome would be the most expensive defense project in history, with estimates ranging from $400 billion to over $1 trillion. It would involve radar installations, interceptor missile batteries, satellite networks, and permanent military bases scattered across some of the most remote and fragile terrain on Earth. Canada has been hesitant to sign on, citing concerns over Arctic sovereignty, environmental impact, and the astronomical costs. Indigenous communities in the North have voiced strong opposition, arguing that the project would militarize their lands and accelerate ecological damage. Carney has been non-committal, saying only that Canada is reviewing the proposal in consulting with allies. Trump linked this directly to the trade threat, saying in his Saturday post that Canada voted in favor of doing business with China instead of supporting the dome that would protect Canada from Russian and Chinese aggression. The implication was clear: if you won't join our security umbrella, you don't get the benefits of our economic partnership. This isn't just about economics, it's about the Arctic. As the ice melts due to climate change, the Northwest Passage, the sea route through the Canadian Arctic archipelago, is becoming a viable global shipping lane for the first time in human history. Control over this route could reshape global trade. Trump wants U.S. control, or at least a dominant U.S. military presence. Carney wants a multilateral approach involving NATO, Denmark, and Arctic indigenous governments. This clash of visions over the future of the North is the real reason the 51st state rhetoric has returned with such venom.
The economic doomsday scenario. If Trump actually pulls the trigger on 100% tariffs, what happens to Canada? The short answer? Economic catastrophe. 85% of Canadian exports go to the United States. That's everything from oil and natural gas to auto parts, aluminum, lumber, and agricultural products. Our economies are so integrated that made in Canada often means made with 40% American parts. A 100% tariff would effectively halt cross-border trade. It would collapse the Canadian dollar, trigger a recession, and send unemployment soaring in provinces like Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec. But the damage wouldn't stop at the border. The U.S. auto industry, which relies on Canadian plants for everything from engines to wiring harnesses, would go into a tailspin. American manufacturers like Ford, GM, and Stellantis have built their supply chains around the assumption of tariff-free trade with Canada. Those supply chains can't be rebuilt overnight. Economists estimate that a full trade war could cost the U.S. economy up to $200 billion in the first year alone. However, 2026 is a review year for CUSMA, the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement that replaced NAFTA. Under the terms of the deal, all three countries are supposed to meet and assess whether the agreement is working. Trump has already said he doesn't even think about the agreement and that its expiration wouldn't matter to him. That's a stunning statement for a sitting U.S. president to make about the foundation of North American trade. Legal experts are divided on whether Trump even has the authority to impose these tariffs without congressional approval. The U.S. Supreme Court is currently deciding if Trump can invoke the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to bypass normal legislative procedures on trade. If the court rules in his favor, Trump would have near total unilateral control over tariffs. If they rule against him, this could all be a bluff.
The endgame. Carney is betting that the world has changed. He's betting that by building a third path with China, Europe, and the Middle East, Canada can survive the America First storm. He's made trips to Brussels, London, Tokyo, and Delhi in recent months, pitching Canada as a stable, resource-rich partner in an increasingly unstable world. But with the U.S. Supreme Court currently deciding if Trump even has the legal power to bypass Congress on these tariffs, the entire North American economy is currently in a state of suspended animation. Businesses are delaying investments, supply chain managers are drawing up contingency plans, currency traders are bracing for volatility. As of tonight, Ottawa is standing its ground. Minister Dominic LeBlanc has dismissed Trump's claims of a Chinese takeover, calling them detached from reality. Carney remains in Quebec City, meeting with his cabinet to prepare for the worst. He's ordered the Department of Finance to draft retaliatory tariff lists targeting swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If Trump goes through with this, Canada won't go down quietly. We are witnessing the end of an era. The days of the predictable U.S.-Canada relationship, the world's longest undefended border, the special relationship, the friendly neighbors, are over. Whether it's the Golden Dome, Chinese EVs, or 100% tariffs, the border between the world's two closest allies has never felt wider. What do you think? Is Carney right to diversify away from the U.S., or is he leading Canada into a trap? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.